Good morning, everyone. So the first thing I'll start off with is some of the 2011 plans, and this is just in general. But this webinar, as Amanda mentioned, is open to all sorts of questions about any of the DevExpress ASP.NET products. So we've got the ASP.NET team on this webinar. They'll be able to answer the backend channel. Julian is here as well to talk about any of the other products that you might be interested in asking about. So with that, let's get started. So just a quick recap, for 2010, we had a really big year. We released the MVC extensions first in beta, and then in the second half, we released them as a full product. We've done a ton of improvements to the ASP.NET HTML editor. Just had a webinar on it recently, so if you'd like, just take a look at tv.devexpress.com and you can see some of the overview, as well as if you want to read about some of the improvements. I'll shoot my email at the back at the end of this webinar. And you can ask me any of those questions. So then we introduced a couple of new controls: the capture control, the tree view control, the grid lookup, and the file manager. And the file manager actually is versatile enough that we were able to use it in the HTML editor and a couple of our other controls. Then we did a bunch of performance improvements, like doing semantic rendering for some of the controls where it made sense. And this gave not just a performance boost for those individual controls, but whenever they were used within other controls, for example, like the pager inside of the grid view. Then we also announced right-to-left support. This is huge for many of our controls, and as I mentioned in 2011, we'll be doing a little bit more of that. And we also completely redesigned our themes and demos. So what's coming up for 2011? Well, in the first half of 2011, we're going to release a theme builder tool. Now this is going to help you work with our themes a little bit easier. The themes are actually pretty easy in the sense that we build off of what ASP.NET already uses with the ASP.NET themes, meaning that you just have to style the CSS properties and so forth. So we're going to release a tool that makes it a little bit easier to identify. For example, you'll be looking at the grid and say, okay, what do I want the header to look like, and so forth. So, this tool will help you do that. Now, we sort of have a mock-up, but it's probably too early to release any screenshots yet. But as I said, in 11.1, it should be coming out, which means that probably before 11.1 is even out, I'll have a post about it and probably even a video in terms of how it works and looks. Now, we're also going to be introducing a docking control. Now this is similar to if you ever use something like Yahoo's homepage allows you to have sort of like widgets that allows you to dock, and that's what this control will allow you to do. It will have sort of the capability to sort of define sections of a page so that they can be docked in different areas. Then we're going to actually introduce new extensions and features for ASP.MVC. For example, we're going to be supporting inline editing and a couple other features for the grid view, as well as introduce a couple of extensions. But more on that later. Then we're going to introduce the multi-header columns for the ASPX grid view. Now the ASPX grid view, this feature is sort of possible right now with the templates, but it's not fully compliant because it doesn't align properly. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time and support this request, which has actually become quite popular. And then the checkbox, we're going to add this a third state. Now, this surprisingly is actually a very popular request as well, that the third state of the checkbox, meaning that it's either checked or it's not checked. But a third state means that it's grayed out. And what this means is that if you ever had, let's say, a tree view with multiple items underneath it, and only some of those items are checked, you'll see that the top parent item will be grayed out, meaning that it is partially checked, so that not all of the items underneath it are checked. And you see this a lot of times in installations of Microsoft Office or Windows. Then we're going to be introducing more improvements for the HTML editor, specifically for import and export. And finally, one of the biggest things this year is, and the reason we're not going to sort of reveal too much, is we're definitely looking at a very popular request about mobile web, HTML5, and CSS3, meaning that we'll have some support for it. And it's a little bit too early to say what exactly, but we're definitely looking in this direction. So that's 11.1, and that's just the first half of this year. So now the second half of this year, we're going to be introducing a track bar control. Now, the track bar is very similar to, well, it's a little bit hard to describe, but it will have support for, say, for example, ranges and so forth. It's like a slider, but with the range support, it will have multiple points on it. And then we're also going to introduce an image gallery control. This will allow you to display your images in a gallery form. Now, we sort of have a version of this now on our DevExpress.com site. We're not real happy with it, and we're gonna put out something that is pretty quality. So we didn't just want to take something that we had now and release a bad version of it. We want to have, for example, the buttons on it that aren't that great. We may support some other cool features that we don't want to announce just yet. Then we're also going to introduce an advanced tooltip control, and this is pretty much how it sounds, but the advanced part means that it's going to be pretty customizable. Then we're going to be improving our upload control. Now, our upload control right now doesn't quite support our themes very well, so we're going to add support for their themes, as well as multiple file selection and support for large files. Now, we're discussing right now exactly how we may do this approach, but it may involve either going to Silverlight or Flash for the actual upload portion. But we'll see, because as I said, we have a upload control in Silverlight, but we may either borrow some of that technology or we may completely use it as an internal. So we'll have more announcement about it later. And then we're going to be supporting vertical scrolling for the tree list. Now, right now, I think we have a solution out to use a div or something like that, but we're going to add it as a feature for the SPX tree list. And finally, we're going to add, we're calling it big demo apps now, but in essence, they're kind of like the real world applications. But a lot of times we get questions about guidance for web forms, our web forms and MVC controls, and how to use them. My basic guidance is always, whenever you do anything for the web, always try to keep it light, in the sense that, when you design a page, if you're going to have a grid view on it, I'd say limit it to a few other controls. Make it very purposeful for what you're going to do. And this, the big demo apps is going to we'll target a few, we'll try to target one or two specific instances of scenarios. So, for example, maybe loans or insurance or something like that, where you can see how it may be used in that environment. So, what you don't see on this list is all the other things that we're probably working on, the little things, and there's a ton of them, right? So there's, for example, we'll be supporting IE9, and that is probably coming out, well, as soon as IE9 is officially released, we'll support it. MVC3 Razor support, that's already there as well. Now, I got this little image here because it's quite a big task for all the things that we've listed for 2011, but we think we can do it. In fact, we know we can do it. So with that, I'll open it up for any questions that anybody has.
Awesome, thanks, Mehul.
Sure.
So we're waiting on questions from our attendees.
Yes. So in the meantime, I will add my contact information here and my blog. So I hope I didn't forget anything, but yeah, so 2011, like I said, does have a huge amount of items planned for it. I know Julian has got his annual roadmap, the exciting news that everybody's dying to hear. So what I've just presented was just a section of it, but there's a ton of good things coming out for it, including...
Hey, Mehul, as you just mentioned me, talk about MVC3. What are we doing for that?
Okay, so MVC3, we have just... Well, we announced it, but we already supported it. So let's put it this way. I just did a post for our MVC extensions where we talk about the... Get rid of this stuff here. Sorry, I don't know how to get rid of the bookmarks. Anyways, so the Razor View engine is new for ASP.MVC. And yeah, Seth, hold on a second. So this the new Razor view engine is quite different from what you are used to in regular ASP.MVC, meaning that there's the WebForms engine. Now, it doesn't really have to do anything with WebForms. It's just called the WebForms engine. But the idea is that the markup that you're used to looking at is very different now. And out of the box, we already supported it. Now, there was a couple things that we had to kind of just look into in terms of with the Razor view engine. But we started testing this, Julian, back in, I think it was November, December, and we were just waiting until the support was official. So as soon as about 2 weeks ago, when Scott released it, I think I was probably the only holdup in terms of putting this blog post out. But I wanted to make sure that we had a demo as well as a code central example, and we have both. So there's a knowledge base article that talks about how to use this, and it kind of essentially covers what I mentioned here, which is that, let me make this a little bit smaller, and which covers some of the items in the bring this up as well. Sorry. So this code central example can be downloaded. So if you hit download example, or you can view it online. But you see that it shows you everything you need. Now in here, the layout CMS file mentions what you need to do, which is to include our scripts as well as the using DevExpress tag and any of the calls to, for example, the grid view. Now, the other stuff hasn't changed in terms of how you actually create the grid. And I go over that kind of stuff in the MVC demo. For example, when you create a grid, you actually create it in a partial, and that partial is then called from the main. Now they're no longer called the ASPX pages. These are CS.HTML to mention the Razor stuff. So, by the way, if any of this seems kind of confusing, let me just give you a quick highlight of the what's going on with ASP.NET. So Microsoft introduced Web Matrix, and Web Matrix is really kind of for beginners and students, and they've introduced something in it called Web Pages. And Web Pages is what Web Pages also supports Razor, and so Razor is a fantastic view engine. As I said, it's just a different way to do this type of markup, right? And but however, you don't have to worry in terms of how our MVC extensions are created. There are a couple of things in terms of what you need to look out for. For example, you're no longer going to call the render method directly after you do an instantiation. You will call the getHTML method. Now, that's not a huge thing. Now, the other thing is also you'll be passing the model, but that's not any different than MVC2. So the other thing is in terms of how the parameters are passed. But as I said, I mentioned all this in terms of the blog post. And the best way to kind of play with a Razor is to download MVC3, open up this example runner. So just hit download example. And if you don't have example runner, click this, and it'll download a little application that'll let you open it in ASP.NET in our Visual Studio 2010 example. So once you do that, you'll have this example running on your local machine as a project in Visual Studio. So as I said, this shows you exactly that it runs pretty much the same, right? You're not going to see a huge difference. What the difference is really just in this markup stuff. So anyways, I think I've blathered on enough. Julian, any other questions?
Yes, from Paul Barnes. Will the new upload control support drag and drop?
Well, so how do you mean, Paul? Can you be a little more specific? Do you mean drag and drop as in sort of the way Google does it in terms of like Gmail where you can drag it to an area and drop it? Well, I'm going to assume that's what he means in essence. So it's too early to say right now because we're going to have that docking that will support drag and drop. It's a little bit too early to say. So I will say let me hold off on answering that question until we get closer. Now, Seth wanted me to mention, and he has a good point, that generally, and he'll mention this in his webinar as well, he has a post, a really awesome post about how to use, let's see, MVC 40. Okay, so he's got a great post that has MacGyver in it, right? So any post with MacGyver is always awesome. And he goes to show you how this can be rendered in ASP.MVC. The good news is this is all going to be taken care of for you because we're going to introduce an extension for reporting, and that'll be coming up a little bit more. So, as I said, the individual teams will be talking about their ASP.NET support as well. For example, what I didn't mention is Mark Miller and his team, IDE team, is doing extensive support for ASP.NET, MVC, JavaScript in 2011. And they'll be talking more about that in upcoming webinars as well. And Julian will have mention of that, I think, in his roadmap as well. So, oh, you know what? I should, sorry, kick myself for one last. Let me mention that all of this right here is going to become super easy because we're going to introduce a project template very soon. Just the same way we had the project template for standard MVC2 applications, we're going to do the same thing for MVC3 and the Razor View engine, so that you don't have to worry. Well, do I declare it this way? Do I declare this? And how do I, you know, put in the style sheets and the scripts and so forth? That will all be taken care of you. So it's going to get a lot easier. However, for right now, if you just want to get up and running, read this post that has links to the actual knowledge base article as well. All right, so Paul has a question about adding a watermark to the ASP.NET report viewer. I think, Paul, you mean that you want to add that watermark. Hold on a second. Okay, I'm going to bring in our expert here. Hey, Seth, can you hear me?
Yep, can you hear me?
Yes, so Paul Barnes wants to know, will you add a watermark to the report ASP.NET report viewer? I mean, that seems like something that goes in the report, right?
Yeah, that would be something you can embed into the report itself, and it should render out. If you have problems with that, you can always email me at sethj@devexpress.com. Alternatively, what you can do is these things are rendered inside of divs, and so you can add a background image to the div itself, and that would also work.
There you go. Thanks, Seth.
No problem.
So let's see, do we have any more questions? Eric, I know that people have answered this, but we are doing a VCL. Eric's asking about anything new for Delphi. We're doing a VCL webinar, Ask DevExpress, like this one on Thursday. That will cover everything new for Delphi. Like someone said, all VCL all the time.
Yes. By the way, tomorrow should be interesting too. We've got a ton of people for Andrew Connell's SharePoint stuff. And here's the one, Amanda, you were just mentioning with Julian.
Yeah, we have tomorrow we have Andrew Connell, SharePoint MVP. He's presenting an intro to SharePoint 2010. There you see it for developers. So that should be pretty cool. And then, of course, at noon later tomorrow we have our CodeRush webinar, Declaring and Refactoring Events with CodeRush, with Mark Miller and Rory Becker.
Hey, okay, so let me mention to Paul. Paul, can you? Okay, you know what I would do, Paul, is email Seth J at devexpress.com. He will get on a personal one-on-one webinar with you. So, by the way, as I mentioned, if any of you guys have any questions, interesting things you'd like to discuss, feel free to ping me. You know, just send an email to mharry@devexpress, and we'll figure out a way to talk online, either over a GoToMeeting or over the phone or something like that, or even email if that's what you prefer. Now, I wanted to make one other mention that if you go to our main site and go click on forums, you'll find all sorts of forums. And for the MVC stuff, we've got a ton of questions being asked for grid view and so forth. And this is a great place to just talk with other peer-to-peer users of DevExpress products. Now, if you have any specific bugs or suggestions, I recommend those definitely go to support. So if you go to devexpress.com/support, you'll get to sort of a grid, but on the left will be a link that said ask a question, and that's what brings you here to ask a question. And this is what I highly recommend if you have any specific issues. Now, because the forums are a little bit more peer-to-peer, if you have any urgent questions or any urgent issues, I should say, please talk to our support team. They're fantastic, and they'll get back much faster than which you may find in the support forums.
Cool. Well, we're still waiting on questions. I can't believe that we don't have more people throwing stuff at you.
Well, you know, I gotta say the response that we've gotten so far for the initial things that we had presented for MVC and what we did for 2010.2 has been
Right.
fantastic. And people are really liking the direction that we're going in with the semantic markup and the MVC extensions. And for the web form side, you know, the file manager control has gotten a great response. So, you know, and plus, a lot of questions are sort of coming in through other channels as well. So, you know, what's great is that this forum right now allows you to ask direct questions. All right, so it looks like we've got a
We
question here
do.
from Diana. So one of the challenges, Diana asks, one of the challenges we face is having a grid view that is always in edit mode. We've achieved this by using templates as suggested on the forms, but sometimes difficult to capture the data entered by the user, especially because we don't use a save button and have to detect when the user leaves the page. In the future, is there anything that would make this easier? So Diana, I'm going to give you the hard truth, which is the way to achieve that is not necessarily easy. Now, so let's say what Diana is basically asking is, if we go to search.devexpress.com, I think it's always, or what did I call it? Edit all. Yeah, I believe edit all or multiple edit brings up those two co-central examples. And what it basically is how to keep the ASP grid view in always edit mode. So let me just first show you what's going on. So in this example is a little bit different than perhaps what she's mentioning. So in this one, you actually select the rows, put them in edit mode. Now, you can do this with the grid view, and the only thing is it comes at a cost, right? Meaning that there's some extra JavaScript that we have to put on the page or HTML that allows us to do this. And you know, the feeling is, and most people when they ask me this question is, we want to make the grid view behave as Excel does. And this is where I think sort of the paradigm is sort of gets broken, or you know, we lose some of that functionality. There's a lot of things that are possible on the web. Is it possible to make it as rich as what we have with Excel or WinForms? I would say no way. You're not even going to get close. And at that point, you may want to consider something like Silverlight, right? But it is possible to do this, right? And as she mentioned that, you know, let's see if I can show the other example that she's talking about. So edit multiple. By the way, if you're not using search, please do. Bookmark this as a homepage. It's fantastic. So let's see how to edit multiple in a single edit forum. Be online. Okay, so that's not the other one that I'm thinking of either. Anyways, so if we just take a look at a little bit of what's going on here, well, this one doesn't show all of the code for it. Well, a little bit does here. So, right. So, for example, here the start edit says, okay, put these elements into edit mode, right? Well, in here you're just setting its visibility. However, as you can see, there's a lot of JavaScript going on here. And here is where it gets kind of a little bit more funkier, right, in terms of how the editor values are gotten, pushed back through a callback, and so forth. So as I mentioned, it's possible, but it just requires a little bit more work. So Diana, to answer your question, I would say that there may be some things we can do, and if you've got those challenges, you know, contact our team or contact me directly at my email, and let's see what we can figure out what those specific issues are and if we can't help you. So
Awesome. So we have another question from Eric. What features will be included in the docking control?
you know, sometimes we're very open about our things, and some days we're like Apple, where we don't want to talk about even a product that we're thinking about, right? So the reason why we're being a little bit more quiet about the exact features is because we want to make sure that we'll be able to deliver a quality product. But the idea is, in general, you will have the capability to have sections of your web page to be able to be moved around. Now, this is kind of like a little bit like, how do I say, SharePoint has like web parts, The Yahoo is probably the best example, right? Meaning that you have a, let's see if I can show it. Okay, so I think you may have to be signed in. But the idea is that these are parts that can be moved around. Now, I don't want to say it'll be exactly like this, but the idea is that let's say you wanted to move video pics up to this center area. Well, that's what it would allow you to do. So there'd be sections that you can have some content HTML, and they'll have some drag and drop support. Now, of course, they'll also support our themes, but other than that, I don't think we want to get into it too much. I hope that helps, Eric. And you're welcome, Diana. Thank you.
All right, well, that looks like all the questions thus far.
Excellent, excellent. So I'm definitely hoping to hear from all of you guys after this webinar. As I mentioned, feel free to contact me at any time. And, if I can't answer anything, I'll definitely pass it on to people much smarter than me. So, yeah. So by the way, we've just to kind of, how do I put this? 11.1. I've been hearing from the team that there are some things that they've already getting close to in terms of maybe announcing. So keep an eye on the blogs. Maybe we'll have some early news about something. I'm hoping the next major thing that I'll get to announce is the project template for the ASP.NET MVC3 Razor engine. But in the meantime, it's not super difficult, and I'll have an upcoming webinar about this support. I should mention that right now. We're going to be doing this Ask the ASP.NET team as the other teams are doing the same thing as well, once a month at least. So I'll have, anyways, and one of the upcoming webinars will be on the MVC3 stuff. Another one I have coming Friday is on the general ASP.NET MVC extensions. So let's see.
Eric's asking, I don't know if you know the answer to this, Mehul, when will you likely have 11.1 out? Quarter 1, quarter 2?
Yes, quarter 1.5, perhaps.
I'll answer if you don't mind.
Oh, there's Julian.
Yes. It's going to be quarter 2. So April, May, June.
Yes, thanks, Julian. And I always put the hard questions on Julian, by the way.
You might also mention, Mehul, that you have Elijah Manor coming in to do a webinar on JavaScript for C# programmers.
Oh my God! You know what? Let's do that. So there's a couple ones that I'm excited to look forward to. So Elijah Manor, if you don't know, one day he got on Twitter and he just was talking about all the awesome links out there, and it's great. And he still does that, right? But he's also a huge client-side JavaScript jQuery guru. He's the ASP.NET MVP. And he's going to do a webinar for us on good C# practices. And that is coming up in early February, which is, I think, what is it, next week? Yeah, next Wednesday, February 2nd, he's going to do that. But I should also mention there's another guy that is doing some JavaScript stuff too, and he's kind of a guru in JavaScript too. Whoa, what's happening here?
So
okay,
it's blog.boyette.com.
Oh my God. Okay, so all right.
There we go.
Yeah, so this is where Julian posts all his love for Pet Shop Boys and all the good stuff, and a ton of programming knowledge as well, right? So he's got a great set of blog posts on JavaScript for C# developers, and he's going to be doing a series on this stuff as well. So this is coming up in February. I think we're nailing down the dates or something, Julian?
Sorry, I was just muted. No, mine are nailed down. So February the 7th, February the 28th, and March the 7th and March 28th.
Excellent, excellent. Awesome. So,
Cool, yes.
No, go ahead.
We have a question.
Mhm.
Have you any plans to support more features on the client side, especially client side data binding with paging and filtering?
Well, not okay. So, what does he mean specifically, Juha? Right? Because let's get into how sort of that works, right? And then maybe that might explain it a little bit better. Because I don't think it's necessary exactly, right? So, what one of the questions that we get asked a lot about this client-side stuff is our general philosophy with our server controls is we feel that it works better to process things on the server, right? And you have to go back to the server anyways to get this data. Unless this data lives on the client side, you're going to be making a call to the server side, right? Now, there's a lot of client-side things that you can already do. For example, there's a call you can make, it's called perform callback, that will instantiate something in the grid. So when you do say perform callback, it essentially means that I want to do something and I want to do it using Ajax, and the grid supports that client-side method. So for example, when I click 4 here, that was a callback that went to the server that said, okay, get me this slice of data right here, right? So in essence, it's hard when somebody says, can you do client-side data binding with paging and filtering? Juha, I think it's already there. But, if you want to be a little bit more specific, right, in the sense that is there a thing you're wanting to do on the client side? And if there is, it's possible, right? Let me see if I can bring up the Visual Studio. Let's just start a new project and throw a grid on it. I think that might become a little easier. And let's add a new default page. In essence, Juha, to answer your question, it's possible to already do it now, right? And what I find is when somebody asks that question, they are looking to do something with the grid view on the client side. And what I just wanted to show you here is there's a lot of that already supported inside of the grid. So grid view has a lot of client side events and functionality that you can hook into that would make it easier. So for example, we go to the smart tag and click client-side events, look at all of these client-side events you can really just get into, right? So for example, row click, row double click, when a row is collapsed or expanded, things for the columns when it's moved and so forth. So as I said, there's a lot of things. So specifically, if you want to do something with paging, you might hook into, let's say, a begin callback or end callback or something. And I'm pretty sure we have some examples of it. And if you're referring to will we have client-side only controls, we don't have any plans to do anytime soon. We've discussed it, but nothing that we're saying that we're going to do specifically for the client side. No. But I feel that there's a lot you can already do with our server controls that have a lot of client-side events and functionality already. And as I mentioned, if you want to discuss this further, feel free to ping me, and I'd love to talk to you about it.
Awesome. Thanks, Mehul. So let's see. He says thank you.
No worries. Thank you for the great question, Joel. Now, if you guys are interested in any specific features as well, I've noticed one of the guys I've been speaking to lately, Sean, he's asked me some great questions about MVC and some of its features and how DevExpress approaches it. As I mentioned, I've had actually go-to-meeting sessions directly with him. So, lately at DevExpress, we've gotten quite a few accounts, and we're also using this new website called join.me. But anyways, feel free to ping us. If you've got questions, we're happy to speak with you. We're happy to show you any products and technologies that we're thinking about. So, I'd love to talk more about some of the other stuff, like the mobile stuff, because we had a lot of great conversations. But we're definitely going to be secretive about that until we get much closer to it. So for sure, we're looking in that direction. And please, guys, if you have any questions, go ahead and ask. Now is the best time because we've got the entire, well, I'd say, okay, 95% of the ASP.NET team on here. Seth, our reporting evangelist, is here. Julian, our CTO, is here. Emil, our Silverlight evangelist, is here as well. So feel free to ask any questions.
Yeah, we've got everybody here.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm honored, and I'm sure they'll make me pay somehow. Cool. So let's do this. It's always we're always really. Oh, okay. So got a question from Andrew Connell. Now this guy is amazing. If I mean not just like SharePoint data, but this guy knows. I mean he's done some great stuff with Silverlight and CodeRush. So Emil, I will leave this question up for you. He's asking a Silverlight question, and he's saying, are there plans for a drag-drop library? Okay, so
Is Emil
Emil,
there?
he may be busy doing something else. Hang on 1 second.
I can answer part of this in the sense that with Silverlight we're producing, or have produced, it's actually there and going to be enhancing a product called DX docking. But I'm going to guess that, Andrew, you're talking more about any particular type of control, moving it around within Silverlight and dropping it on other things, not necessarily just panels in some kind of screen or display or something like that. The roadmap has nothing on that per se, and I don't think we've ever been asked for it. I may be wrong on this, but Emil might be the best person to answer this, since he has more contact with the team and hence more information than I do.
Yes, Julian, I've asked Emil if he'll jump on here. So, but I think it's best probably, Andrew, that you hook up directly with Emil. He's the Silverlight guru here, and he's got the direct line with the team, and he'll be able to answer all your questions.
Yeah, Andrew, I just sent you his email if you want to email him. It's Emil, EMILM, at DevExpress.com.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. So as I mentioned, he'll be doing an awesome. I mean, he's going to do like 2 of them, I think. Yeah, SharePoint 2010 data access and Intro to SharePoint 2010 tomorrow. And since we're talking about SharePoint, I should mention that we have a SharePoint specific site as well, sharepoint.devexpress.com. And we're going to be updating this soon, but this one shows you a couple examples of the SharePoint specific web parts that we have, the grid view and the HTML editor, as well as examples and a knowledge base article in how you can embed any of our ASP.NET controls inside of SharePoint. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
So no, Andrew is saying that the target audience for his presentation is ASP.NET developers who just have to know how to spell SharePoint.
Man, I tell you, why did Microsoft have to make it so long, right? They know I have typing challenges.
Well, that's true.
I have a shortcut for devexpress.com, so if I hit DXC, it types devexpress.com. So I need to have one for SharePoint too. So, anyways. All right. Well, I guess we're hitting the 40-minute mark, and we're always reticent of people's time. So we'll leave it open in the questions thing, but I will simply say thank you, and ping me anytime at mharry@devexpress.com. And I'd love to hear from you guys.
Awesome. Thank you, Mehul, and Julian for being here, and the ASP.NET dev team. So like we said, just to recap, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, DevExpress welcomes Andrew Connell, SharePoint MVP, as he presents an introduction to SharePoint 2010 for developers. If you've ever wanted to jump on the SharePoint 2010 bandwagon, this is the session for you. You'll learn about the various options you have in standing up a SharePoint development environment. Then we'll explore the developer tools and build a container to store some data with a content type, list template, and list instance. Finally, you'll learn the best places to go to get information and help going forward from books, classes, and online forums. And at noon Pacific Standard Time tomorrow, Declaring and Refactoring Events with CodeRush, Mark Miller and Rory Becker reveal everything you need to know about working with events in CodeRush. If you declare events, event args, or delegates, you need to see this session. And Wednesday, Andrew Connell is back with more SharePoint goodness. SharePoint 2010 Data Access. SharePoint 2010 has a robust browser-based user interface for interacting with data in SharePoint sites. In this presentation, he'll explore the various data access options. This includes working with SharePoint data on the server with Link for SharePoint, as well as from off the server with the client object model, REST, and Silverlight. We have a full lineup of webinars currently scheduled through March. Check them out at devexpress.com/webinars. And again, if you missed anything from this webinar or you want to review any previous webinars or watch hundreds of DevExpress product tutorials, visit us online at the DevExpress channel at tv.devexpress.com. Again, thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for choosing DevExpress.